My name is Tom Taylor, and I'm in the class of 1970, and I have held about every position you can at Maryville College. I'm a legacy. My father graduated from Maryville College in the 30s. Both my children graduated from Maryville College. My wife graduated from Maryville College. I was a student at Maryville College. I was on the faculty of Maryville College. I was a vendor with Maryville College and a contractor. So I have done it all. And I don't know exactly what year I served on the alumni board. I think it was maybe in the 80s, and I wisely chose to be on the nominating committee so that I couldn't appoint myself as president, because I could see that train coming at me very quickly. At any rate, I could tell plenty of stories, but I'm going to tell one story that happened in 1974. There was a group of students that named themselves MC2, and they decided they didn't want to live in the dorm. They wanted to live off the grid. They decided they wanted to live in Willard House. They got their money back for their food service and their dorm, and we lived in Willard House, and I was the faculty advisor, 27 years old, faculty advisor, single. 5 boys, 5 girls, and they cooked their own meals. They kept the temperature at 50 degrees. They studied using candles and lanterns sometimes. Really sort of a stupid experiment, because it didn't really make any difference. But anyway, and we turned the lights out after 8 o'clock in there, and they had to study, get all their studying done. So it was a strange situation to begin with. And they had this game they would play at night, which evolved over the weeks that we were there. We did this in winter term, and they would collect cowbells and air horns and whistles. And in the meantime, I was rebuilding a pump organ for a friend of mine downstairs, and so I would play spooky music on the on the pump organ. These kids would run around on the top 2 floors of Willard House, hiding from each other. When they stumbled on the other, they would either blow an air horn or a whistle or a cowbell. I mean, it's not something that makes any sense, but it would go on for hours, and you could hear screaming and whistle blowing and horns going off. Well, in the middle of one of these sessions, we were having February meetings, and I was the only one downstairs, and in walked Dr. Copeland, president of the college, Dean Blair, the dean of the college, and the February meeting speaker, Carlisle Marney, who was probably one of the leading theologians at the time out of Duke. And he was there doing February meetings. And I jumped up to try to greet them, and all this noise was going on upstairs. And I went to the stairwell and yelled, "Hey, you guys, shut up." And there was still honking and whistling and, and air horns going off, and girls screaming as they were running around up there. And I tried to explained to them, and Carlisle Marney loved it. And so I finally went upstairs and rummaged around and got them all downstairs, and they introduced themselves. And we talked a while, and Carlisle Marney said, "Well, you know, I think I would rather stay here. Is there any way I could stay with these folks instead of in the guest house?" And so we said, "Yeah, we've got air mattresses and sleeping bags." So he got an air mattress and a sleeping bag, and the kids all were around him, and he sat there till about 2:30 in the morning telling stories and discussing theology with these kids. It was really a pretty impressive meeting. So the next morning at February meetings, everybody in campus knew, this was during the streaking phase, everybody knew there was going to be a streaker, and they had guards set up at every door. They knew there was no way this could happen. Even the football players who sat at the very back were all sitting on the front row waiting for the streaker. And everybody knew who he was. I didn't know who he was. And just as Carolyn Blair started introducing Dr. Marney, the streaker jumped out of the organ pit, or out of the organ loft, where he had stayed all night. He had gotten a key and gotten in that night, and was in the organ loft, and jumped out and did a lap around Dr. Blair and Dr. Marney, and then ran out the door, and they had a van waiting that he jumped into, and they bolted off. I think they knew he had on a baklava, so you couldn't see exactly who it was, but it was great. And of course, Carolyn Blair dissolved into laughter at the podium. two lines would line up on either side of the sidewalk from Davis over to Pearson's, and the streakers would take off their clothes at Davis and then run down the line, and then come back around behind the Willard House and go back to the dorm. And like I say, I was the faculty advisor, and I was standing in the front yard of Willard House, and one of my students came running down the line, and she did a circle around me and said, "Hi, Mr. Taylor," and then took off and went on around. I said, "Pat, it's going to be tough seeing you in class tomorrow." But that was the '70s, and it was great fun, and I loved every minute of it.